Hello everyone and welcome to Mathematics. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to create a histogram from scratch. And a histogram is just another way we can visualize our data if we have a list of data. So for our example histogram, we're going to do a data list right here of 15 numbers. If you count them, there are 15 numbers. And what this data is just data representing the number of birds a bird watcher saw each day when he was doing it. So that basically that means that for 15 days, if you count these numbers, he saw this amount of birds. So for the first day he saw 12 birds, the second day he saw 3 birds, and the third day he saw 8 birds. And so one of the first steps you do with any data is you want to always write it in ascending order. And what ascending order is writing it from least to greatest. So from the smallest numbers to the biggest numbers. So you always want to do that first with anything in statistics, not just histograms. So let's do that, and I'm going to do some bookkeeping to make sure I don't miss a number. So again, we're just doing ascending order, least from greatest. So I'm going to start and look for my lowest numbers. I see a 1, I see another 1 and another 1. I'm going to look for some 2s. I see 2 2s. I'm going to rewrite them. I see 3 3s. Do I see 4s? Nope. Do I see 5s? Nope. Do I see some 6s? Yes. I see 1 6, 2 6. So I'm just crossing them out to keep track. You should make your own system on how to do this as well. So I see 7, I see an 8, I see that I have a 10, I have a 12, and I have a 14. So now if I want to double check to make sure I have this correct, if I counted my numbers, I should have 15, just like the amount of numbers I have here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So we're good, we got it. So again, these numbers represent the amount of birds you saw for different days. So this again is listing it from least to greatest. And that is what we call ascending order. Ascending order. I recommend you do this with any type of statistic data that you have. For dot plots, for histograms, for any other type of thing that we learn. It's very important because it just helps you really quickly do the plots. So let's look at the two main things you have to do when you're doing a histogram or when you're creating one. So the first main step is you're going to create a frequency table. The second main thing you're going to do is plot your histogram. So basically what a frequency table is just a way to organize your data so you can do your histogram. And the way histogram works is the data is organized by intervals. And what an interval is just a two numbers between two given numbers. So if you look right here on this interval, this is our first column in our frequency table. I have the numbers from 1 through 4. So that's just showing me that there's numbers in that interval. And I'm going to, for my frequency, I'm going to figure out how many of my numbers are in this interval. So when you create a histogram, you always have to have an interval column and a frequency column. So your intervals always have to be the same width. And what I mean by width is just how many numbers are within it. So normally in our class you're going to be given an interval, but if you were creating this by hand, you may have to make up your own interval lengths. And the amount of intervals that you make will determine the amount of bars in your graph. So let's start with making our intervals first off. So I'm given 1 through 4, so let's see how many numbers are in there. What is my width of my interval? My width is going to be, if I count from 1, 2, 3, 4. I stop at 4, so I have 4 fingers up, so that means this interval is 4. I'm going to continue doing that until I reach the last value of my data, which is 14, or go beyond it. So I'm going to go and put 5, and now I'm going to count 4 from 5. 5, 6, 7, 8. So 8 will be my interval, the end of my interval for this one. I'm going to start the next number, 9. I'm going to start count 4 again. 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 will be the upper end of my interval. I'm going to do 13, and now I'm going to count 4 one more time. 13, 14, 15, 16. So if you notice, I am including the number at the beginning of the interval in my counting. So be very meticulous so that you keep doing that. Now let's find our frequency. So if we go back to our data, we're going to count the the amount of numbers that are in this interval or this in between these numbers, and that includes the first number and the last number. So if I was counting my numbers for this, I'm going to count any numbers that include 1, 2, 3, or 4. I'm going to include all those numbers when I'm counting for my frequency, and that's just telling me how often it happens. So that's what frequency is, how often something happens. So let's count up till we see 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there's no 4, so I have 8 numbers. So 8 numbers is my frequency for the first interval. Now let's keep going. So I have to count any number that is in between, or that includes 5 to 8. So I look back at my data, and this is why you see it's so easy to just do this when it's listed out like this. So I start at 6 because I don't have a 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. I stop at 8 because that's where my interval ends. So I have 4. And then finally I'm going to start at 9. So let's see, I don't see 9, so I'm going to go to 10. I'm going to count until I hit 12 because that's the end. So 1, 2. My frequency for 9 through 12 is 2. Now I'm going to do 13 through 16. So I only have one number left, 1. Now, if you want to double check to make sure you did everything correctly, you're going to add up all 4 of these numbers in your frequency, and that should equal the amount of numbers that we had. So remember, I told you we had 15. So 8 plus 4 is 12, and I add 2, that's 13, 14, and add 1 more, that's 15. So I know I did it correctly, so we're good. So what this means with our data plot is the interval just represents the amount of birds, I believe. The amount of birds. So we can say birds, and then the frequency indicates the amount of days. So this is what our histogram is going to be telling us. So here's our histogram, and now let's plot it. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I plot my intervals on the horizontal axis. So you can do it however you want typically, but you want to have an equal spacing. Your bar graph has to be the same, or your bars on your bar graph have to be the same width. So, or you can think of it as the same area. So 1 through 4 for my first one, I'm just labeling my intervals. And then 5 through 8, I'm going to try to make them as neat as I can. And then 9 through 12. And then finally 13 through 16. So this again, this is just the amount of birds. I'm just going to label it, my amount of birds. Now on the vertical axis, that's where I put my frequency. That is the height of all of my vertical bars. So I'm going to go kind of sideways. So I'm going to do frequency. And we know that the frequency is just the amount of days. The amount of days. I'm just putting the days on the side, but this is commonly labeled frequency at times. So that's what our vertical is. So now I'm going to always start at 0. Always start at 0 right here. Because when you're going up, you always want to start at 0. Otherwise, you can somebody who looks at your histogram will misinterpret it. So I'm going to go up to 8. I'm going to count by 2s. So I'm going to count by 2s. So I'm going to do 2, 4, 6, 8. I'm going to stop at 8 because that's as high as my frequency goes. Now I'm going to plot my bars for my histogram, and they have to all be the same width, and they have to be touching. Okay, so I might not have labeled this correctly, but let's do it. Let's start with a red. I'm going to do different colors. So for my interval 1 through 4, I'm going to make a bar of height 8. So my bar of height 8 will go about here, and I'm going to make it about here. I'm going to shade it in, make it look pretty. So I'm done with my first interval and my first frequency. Now I'm going to do my next interval, and I'm going to make it green. So 5, 8 is right here. I might have not labeled these correctly, but remember they have to be the same width. So I'm going to do green, and it's going to go up to 4. Now I'm going to do 9 through 12. I'm going to make that, let's do brown. I'm going to do brown. So 9 through 12 goes to a height of 2. So remember, you're just doing the height where the number is on the vertical axis. So 2, height. I'm trying to make them exactly the same width. So you notice it might not work where I labeled it, and that's okay. Lastly, 13 through 16, I'm going to do purple. I just love colors. So 13 through 16 should go to 1. So this is 2, so I have to go about halfway. About half that way. And that's how you plot a histogram. So just a few things of how I read this really quick. So if I was to read this, this first bar is telling me that that he saw approximately 1 to 4 birds for 8 days. This one right here says that he saw 5 to 8 birds approximately for 4 days. And this one says, on the brown one, says that he saw approximately 9 to 12 birds for 2 days. So you notice this may have similarities with the dot plots because the shape will be very similar. That is how you plot a histogram, and I hope this helped you out.